Welcome back to a special edition of the preview show, where we recap. Last night we recapped the Cup Series. Harry Loomis came on and did that. Now today we're going to talk about the Xfinity Series. Nathan Solomon, of course, a regular on this channel, has joined me to talk all things Xfinity. How's it going, bud?
I'm doing well, my friend. How are you?
Doing well. I know it's been a busy. I know there's been a lot of news. In fact, within the off season and stuff, but overall, this is the season. It's been pretty awesome, and of course, you're wrapping up kind of your first season with all this.
Yes, first full season with the whole media side of NASCAR. I've obviously been a fan for a very long time, but this is first year that I really got into the media side of things. Got to the racetrack. I mean, I was able to get to a couple of NASCAR weekends this year and cover it, so that's been pretty awesome.
You were at Watkins Glen, I think. I think you were
Pocono and Watkins Glen.
I forgot you were at Pocono. That's right. All right. So let's talk about the NASCAR Xfinity Series. We did our Cup recap last night, as I just said. But overall, the Xfinity Series proves that it's just delivers once and yet again. Boy, oh boy, that was a fun year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they have the best package of all three series. And I mean, you know, when you kind of look at like the Cup Series versus the Truck Series, I mean, as we know, we've talked about a lot. We talked about this a lot in Martinsville. There's obviously a lot of cautions, a lot of incidents, basically only really short runs. And then in Cup Series, you know, you go to a lot of mile and a half, so you just have some of those brutal long runs where you might only get one caution for an incident all race. The Xfinity Series kind of has that really nice balance where those cars are so hard to drive that there's not really like an aggression level like there is in the Camping World Truck Series, but just the cars are so difficult to drive that makes things happen, that makes incidents happen, that makes guys spin out or get into a crash. And of course, I'm not saying that getting into a crash is a good thing, but just with how difficult the cars are to drive, with how good the package is, it just kind of creates that balance between short runs and long runs, and it makes for some really awesome racing.
Yeah, it was kind of like three drivers kind of dominated this season. We'll get to a lot more in a minute, but really it comes down to Austin Cindric, AJ Allmendinger, and Ty Gibbs.
Really, or anyone driving that 54 car. I mean, of course, Kyle Busch, he went 5 for 5 in the Xfinity Series this year with 5 wins. I mean, that 54 car was better than any other car. I mean, I'm willing to argue that if Ty's in that car all season, that car could have won the drivers' championship. Of course, it did not. But yeah, Ty was obviously really good, and that was a huge surprise. I think he only had 10 races booked originally once the season started. I know that sponsorship was kind of a big thing for him. He didn't have full season sponsorship and ran some blank cars to start the season, but obviously came right out, won the Daytona road course, and then he ended up with about half the season in the 54. So a really impressive season for him.
Yeah, of course. I knew when he get in the car he was gonna win, but 4 wins on the year. You got to stick with the Gibbs. I mean, come on, that's what I like to say on the previous show.
And I think the most surprising part about Gibbs is we kind of didn't really expect him to be so good on road courses. I mean, 2 of his 4 wins were on road courses. I don't think anyone ever really realized he was that good of a road course racer, and he won 2 pretty difficult road courses.
Yeah, he's a pretty good one. Of course, he won at Watkins Glen. He won at Daytona Road Course. He was up there in contention at Mid Ohio. He was up there in contention at Road America. He's pretty good on these things. So, it's and he's good everywhere. I mean, he won at Charlotte, he won at Kansas. It's definitely going to be there. And we haven't really heard of what Ty's plans are. I know everyone's assuming that he'll go full time, but remember, it's not official until it gets announced. So
absolutely, he still kind of struggled with sponsorship a little bit, believe it or not. So
I know he picked up Sports Clips earlier in the year. It's good stuff there, and it should be fun to see. How about Austin Cindric? Of course, we really don't know what Team Penske is going to do in 2022 in the Xfinity Series, but really just another solid season to get ready to go to the Cup Series to take the 2 car.
Yeah, a really good season for Cindric. I mean, what was it? 6 wins, I believe, 5 wins. He didn't win the championship, of course. He finished second, but I don't think that honestly matters a whole lot to him. I'm sure he's a little disappointed he didn't win the championship, but I mean, he had another great run and maybe the best car on Saturday in the championship, and he won it in 2020. But two consecutive really solid seasons for him. He's obviously proved his worth in the or that he is a Cup Series caliber driver. And with the new car next year in the Cup Series, with there again being 6 road courses in the Cup Series, I think he has an opportunity where he can go right up to the Cup Series and contend to win some races because he's a very talented race car driver.
Yeah, for sure. AJ Allmendinger came in there. This is his, by the way, his kind of his, his comeback first, full-time season with Colleague, and puts on one heck of a performance.
Yeah, I mean, I thought maybe going into this season, Allmendinger would have a pretty good year. I thought he'd likely make the playoffs. Maybe he'd win a race or two, win a couple road courses, but that'd really be it. But I mean, I was pretty wrong. I mean, 5 wins, 18 top fives, just a super impressive year. I mean, he's starting to figure out the ovals now, and that's kind of scary because we all know his talent on road courses. I mean, he can win Cup Series road course races, and he showed that this year. And now he's improving on ovals, and next season he's going to go up to the Cup Series and run around 13 races or so with Colleague, and I figure that likely includes the road courses, so that's probably at least 7 ovals he's going to run. So I think they're going to build a schedule for him where he on tracks where he could succeed, and I think that when he goes up to the Cup Series next year on a part-time basis, he can definitely have some really strong runs, and I would not rule out him ever having a full-time Cup Series ride again, maybe in 2023 if he has another really strong year next season.
Well, he has to have fun doing it. That's the only rule.
Absolutely.
Bryce and Matt Colleague have put up.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about the champion, Daniel Hemric. I don't think it surprised any of us that Daniel Hemric won the championship, but I think it surprised a lot of people that he waited until the last race to win. It was actually, that's the first career winning Cup, Xfinity, trucks, and all of NASCAR. The thing is, when Daniel Hemric's going to win, we all thought that maybe Daniel Hemric's not meant to win or something like that, because we saw him come so close so many times, and then he goes out and now he's the champion.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that he's champion. I thought that maybe there was a good chance where he could maybe run second or third on Saturday at Phoenix and win the championship, and have someone like John Hunter Nemechek or Justin Allgaier win the race. But no, I mean, he got it done. I think one of the things that we've always kind of talked a little bit about Hemric is I don't know if his not to say that his will or want isn't there to win a race, but maybe his aggression or intensity level might not always be there. I think that's something that we kind of talked about before, but I think he kind of shut down that thought and that theory on Saturday. I mean, he obviously moved Cindric for the win there, raced him really hard, and he showed that he really wants to win. So yeah, I'm surprised in which the race came that he won, but I knew it was a matter of time until he finally won one.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about Joe Gibbs Racing as a whole, because Daniel Hemric won, and yes, the 54 car won so many times, but Brandon Jones, who had a really good season in 2020, didn't win last year. Had probably one of his best statistical season out there. And then Harrison Burton, multi-time winner last year in 2020. This year, he doesn't win a race.
Yeah, it was a little weird to kind of see that big difference there between the 54 and the other 3 cars. I mean, this is, Hemric's win, like you said, is the first Joe Gibbs Racing win outside of the 54, and they had like a third of the wins in the Xfinity Series, which is pretty nuts.
Yeah.
But yeah, kind of a weird season for them outside that. I don't know what the 54 has or had that the other 3 cars lacked this season. I think those other 3 still have talent, but Harrison Burton, he's going up to the Cup Series next season. I'm not going to lie, I'm a little worried about him because, he had a pretty good season in 2020. This year kind of seemed like a step backwards, and Toyotas were pretty strong this year overall, in the Xfinity Series. So I'm a little concerned about Harrison Burton. I think next year in the 21, he's going to struggle a bit. So I don't know if he's fully Cup Series ready, but of course, time will just have to tell with the new car and everything. Anything can happen. That's for sure.
So, breaking IndyCar news: Kyle Kirkwood to the 14 for AJ Foyt Racing next year. So, a little interesting tidbit there. Well, definitely more on that later on. So, let's talk about junior motorsports. It was a good year for them. They obviously did not start off as well, but as the season went on, they became a very dangerous team. You look at Noah Gragson, probably his best year around. Allgaier had a pretty good year, even though he didn't make the championship for. Josh Berry won a couple races for them. And then Michael Annett, of course, this is his final full-time year. And then Sam Mayer.
Yeah, I think JR Motorsports had a pretty quietly good year, like you said. I mean, Allgaier won a couple races early on. Josh Berry surprised some people. I think everybody thought that he'd go to Martinsville and have a pretty good run, but nobody really expected him to win. And then, of course, at Las Vegas in the Michael Annett car, nobody saw that one coming. He was supposed to race at he was supposed to race the Martinsville 300 that weekend in the late model race, or in the late model series, and had to drop out last second to run that Xfinity Series race. And boom, he goes out and wins surprisingly. So next year, Josh Berry is going to be full time. He has a very good opportunity to make a deep run in the Xfinity Series. Gragson, of course, he's going to be a threat to make it to the championship 4 again next season, and that the 9 team did not get off to the best start this season, but they found speed when it mattered, obviously winning 3 times in the last 10 races. Allgaier, he's always a consistent threat. Another pretty solid, consistent season for him. You can't always make it to the championship 4, but that doesn't take away from what he accomplished this season. He had another really good year. And then Sam Mayer, he's just young. He needs time, but I think next year he's going to have an opportunity to win some races. And of course, he was kind of dealt a not so great hand and had a lot of pretty bad luck. And it's also really hard to go into a team like that, a full-time team right in the middle of the season. So I think he'll be better suited for success next season with a little bit more age and time.
Yeah, we'll be excited to see what Junior Motorsports does next year. Of course, Allgaier's back full-time. Gregson's back full-time. Mayer will be full-time next year. Josh Berry will be full-time. Still need to get confirmation about the lineup. But, yeah, definitely for sure there. Hey, you want some breaking news, bud? Veteran Alan Hart will join Sam Hunt Racing for the 2022 season. Will be a crew chief and the technical director for the 2022 Xfinity Series season for Sam Hunt Racing. So that just broke. The Midland, Michigan native. Of course, that's mid-Michigan for people. I
think that's a good. That's kind of a good point to maybe even talk about Sam Hunt Racing a little bit. I mean, their first season here in 2021, I think they surprised some people with their speed, including myself. They have some pretty competitive equipment. And when John Hunter ran, I think, what was it, P3 or P4 at Richmond in September, that kind of helped, I guess, verify their speed and everything, and kind of showed that, hey, they've got some pretty competitive equipment. If they just get the right guys in that seat, they can succeed. So I think expect a big year out of them next year. I don't know if they're going to have a full-time driver or not, but I think whoever's driving that car next year we'll see some pretty strong finishes.
Of course, Alan Hart was the engineer for Justin Allgaier at Junior Motorsports since Allgaier got to Junior Motorsports in 2016. So it's big for them. So we'll obviously get more into that. Let's talk about Kaulig Racing for a second. Another good team that had a good year. Justin Haley got some wins. Jeb Burton got a win. We know Jeb Burton's not going to be back next year. He says he has something. Still don't know what that's going to be like. Possibly something could be announced maybe next week. So we'll keep your eyes on that. So what do you like out of Kaulig? And of course, AJ, Justin, and Jeb. That was a pretty solid year for Kaulig.
Yeah, obviously, they've got a lot of speed, of course. Justin only went to victory lane once, but he kind of was a lot more consistent than I think we've seen before. I mean, he had 24 top 10s in 33 races, so the consistency is there. He's obviously a really strong super speedway racer. But he's never won an Xfinity Series race outside of a super speedway, which is kind of interesting. I mean, he's a pretty good road course racer. He's pretty well rounded, but he's just super good at the super speedways. So going cup racing next year, he's going to be a big threat at those super speedway races. I mean, he has a Cup Series win to his name, rain shortened and all, but still, a win's a win. Um, I think that I would have liked to see him go to victory lane a couple more times and prove, hey, I can win on an intermediate, I can win on a short track, but he's going to have a strong ride in the Xfinity Series or in the Cup Series next year to be able to prove that. Jeb Burton, kind of the same thing. He's a really good super speedway racer, obviously not coming back in 2021, but I think that Kaulig just needs to find that right mix around AJ in the Xfinity Series. I mean, AJ is turning into a pretty well-rounded racer down there. Of course, road courses are his forte. They're gonna have another really consistent driver in Daniel Hemric coming in, and then they may or may not have a third car. So we'll have to find out if they'll have that, and if so, who it'll be.
Yeah, sounds good. In 2020, the story was Stuart Haas Racing and what they were able to do in the 98 with Chase Briscoe. They bring in Riley Herbst, who was with Joe Gibbs Racing in 2020, and the team kind of picked up progress as the year got on, but didn't score a win last year.
Yeah, but Ford had its problems this year, and not just Stuart Haas Racing. Ford had a down year, and of course it was because of the parts freeze. And I mean, you look at all three series, there wasn't really many great Fords out there. I mean, the truck series, Todd Gilliland, he was definitely the best Ford, and he ran pretty well there. In the Xfinity Series, there's Austin Cindric. That was really the only Ford running well. And then in the Cup Series, really only Ryan Blaney. Maybe you could throw Kevin Harvick in there, even though Harvick didn't win, but just not a good year for Ford. And we kind of we had our questions about Ford and as to why they were struggling earlier on the season, but kind of as we learned more about the parts freeze and some of the difficulties as a manufacturer as a whole they were having. Then it was like, well, we kind of know Ford's not going to be that much of a factor this year. And they really weren't, except for Cindric in the Xfinity Series championship.
Absolutely. So let's talk about RCR for a minute. Myatt Snider goes in the 2 this year full-time, gets the win at Homestead. How do you think RCR did? Because it's an interesting thing. Of course, we all know what they're doing next year. They're going to go to 2 cars. Of course, Myatt, we'll get to what Myatt's doing next year in a minute. But overall, how do you think RCR did in 2021?
I think they did okay. I mean, comparing to Kaulig, I don't think that their Xfinity Series program is quite as good. They still have good cars. I mean, it's kind of the same in the Cup Series. They're not the top Chevy team. They're one of the top Chevy teams, but they're in a position for next year where they're kind of rebooting their Xfinity Series program. Of course, not that it went away, but they're putting more resources into it. I mean, they're going to have Sheldon Creed and Austin Hill, 2 very successful truck series drivers coming in to drive for them next year. So it kind of looks like that they're going to put more resources into their Xfinity Series team next season. So I'm going to expect that they be better. And Myatt, I mean, this is really his first top ride this year. I think he did okay. I mean, of course, the Homestead win was a good win for him, and maybe a little bit of a surprising win as a whole. But I don't think he did outstanding, but he didn't do awful. I think he had an okay year for them.
Yeah. So kind of going into, and then there's really a lot of the rest, and as we mentioned, Myatt Snider. Of course, he's going to go to Jordan Anderson Racing next year. That's a team that really kind of surprised a lot of people with what Jordan's been able to do, and of course, with the plan next year to go, full time with Myatt, it's definitely been good. But whenever that car is up there, a bunch of Cup guys were in there. Josh Berry was in there several times, but yeah, that car was really, really good in there.
Yeah, the 31's got a lot of speed, and I think that Myatt going into that car isn't a huge step backwards for him. I think he's going to have an opportunity to kind of, for the most part, run around where he did, where he did this year, which is a lot of times he's kind of like an 8th, 12th place car. He wasn't, his only top 5 was his win at Homestead, right? So I think that he's going to have an opportunity to be about a 10th place car, which is around where he was in the Xfinity Series this year. And but yeah, it's a good opportunity for him. Like, I'm a little surprised that Jordan Anderson is putting in a full-time driver to drive that car, because I kind of thought that he liked having that mix of drivers to kind of have specialists come in to suit each racetrack. But I think Mike gives him an opportunity to run pretty well, and maybe even contend for one of those final playoff spots.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of teams that also impressed last year, getting win, Jeremy Clements, one, Brandon Brown, another. A lot of other teams that are really on the rise, the big machine racing team with Jay Buford. Out of a lot of the other teams that we haven't had a chance to mention, who's gonna surprise you this year, going into next year? Who impressed you?
I think Jordan Anderson and Myatt have a really good opportunity to succeed. Jeremy Clements is always a really consistent driver. I mean, he's not always going to go out there and contend for the win, but again, he can consistently run 10th to 12th place and not wreck the car, and and keep getting points every week to where they're in a position to make it to the playoffs, and that's what happened this year. Now, of course, he got a little help from Michael Annett missing some races with his injury, but he had a really consistent season. So I think that's a guy to look out for. I think Alpha Prime, I know that they're not gonna have a full-time driver. They're gonna have, at least 4 drivers driving that car next season, most likely. So, but I think that with what they have, I mean, Tommy Joe is gonna be, he's gonna run around a third of the season. We know Raj is gonna run, at least 3 races.
Yep.
Caesar said he's gonna run super speedways. They announced just last week Andy Lally is going to run road courses, but that kind of leaves around 10 or so races that they can fill with whoever, which, could be a mix between some of the younger guys, maybe even a couple Cup veterans. So I think they could have some speed, and it seems like they could maybe have some more resources next year as well.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, give me some bold predictions. What's going to happen in 2022?
2022. I think that Riley Herbst is finally going to win a race.
Okay.
I think that happens, because I think Ford is going to be a lot better next year.
All right.
Let's see. Hemric's is gonna rip off a bunch of wins next year. I think he's gonna have a really good year for Colleague.
Okay.
Josh Berry is gonna be the championship 4.
Okay.
That's what I'll go with.
Okay, sounds good. All right. Lots of fun stuff there. Exciting to see what the Xfinity Series does next year. They still have these.
Yes, they do. They still have lug nuts.
Yeah. All right. Nathan Solomon, thank you so much for talking about the Xfinity Series tomorrow. And later on, we're going to be talking about the Truck Series. So that'll be fun. All right. We'll talk to you next.